What sparked your interest in the Order of the Nine Angles? They made some interesting music. That's mainly how I know about them. So I've always been interested in the macabre, right? And not in like a weird, like goth girl, like I'm not like those other girls kind of way. It's like what makes them tick, you know, what makes someone want to do that kind of stuff. And also, what is the metaphysics of it? If you talk to people like Wendigoon, right? He'll say that the devil comes bearing gifts, and that is true. That is 100% true. However, with that said, in my opinion, the devil, Satan, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, he is jealous of man. He is jealous of man, and he is jealous of God. And the reason why he's jealous of man is because God called us his greatest creation. He also thinks that he could be a better ruler than God. Satan didn't trick us into eating the apple, right? Eve and then Adam. He didn't trick them into eating the apple because he wanted them to be smart and have awareness and things like that. He did that because he knew it would sully them. He wanted to sully God's greatest creation. And that's why they say the devil comes bearing gifts, right? Is because those gifts are sinful. They are meant to sully you, right? But then on the flip side, there's also that side where it's less that he's going to be vindictive and more that he's going to be destructive. And that is why I do believe in like what's it called when they take over a body, not infestation. Why can't I think of the name right now? Why can't I think of the name? Possession. I do believe possession is a thing. In addition to that, I do believe that there are probably pacts you can make with Satan, and there are things that you can do, right? There is magic and other things like that you can utilize. There's rituals you can utilize. Now, at the end of the day, if you keep Christ with you everywhere you go, none of that shit is going to hurt you. At least it's not going to hurt you in a real way, in a severe way. But it's still there. To actually answer your question about what really interests me about them is, for one thing, like I said, it's a morbid fascination, and it makes me wonder, like, why would someone do that? Like, how could someone do that and stuff like that? But then also there's kind of a piece of me that wants to demystify in a way. So that people can understand it a little bit better, so that for one thing you can kind of resist it a little bit better, but then for another thing, so that you just kind of know what their fucking deal is, you know? Like when I was speaking, there's a moment, right? I released the interview recently. I was talking to Interzone Analysis, really cool guy. I like him a lot. But he is not part of the ONA, at least he claims to not be. Instead, he is an occultist, right? He enjoys the occult. And then on top of that, he is also an investigative journalist. He spent time over in the Middle East and stuff like that. He ended up saying something that completely demystified them to me. He said that they are Evolian. If you've heard of Julius Evola, or Evola, I still don't know, I don't even know how to pronounce the name. If you have read some of his books, even a little bit, right, you all of a sudden understand what O9A is. And you don't have to be O9A. Obviously, I'm not exactly a fan of fucking Satanists here, all right? But I understand them on a level that I feel, I won't even say a lot of people don't, but I mean, a lot of people don't, because they get wrapped up in the whole Satanism thing. Now, these people do believe in a quote-unquote Satan, let's say, right? But outside of that, right, their main philosophical tenets are actually very much Evolian in nature, right? Ride the Tiger, for instance. If you read Ride the Tiger, you can take Ride the Tiger and you can apply it to a lot of the teachings that you will hear about when you listen to these people speak. Same thing with Revolt Against the Modern World. Although it demystified him, and as soon as he mentioned that name, I was like, oh, so that's what this is, right? Even though, right, it almost is kind of fascinating to me still, because it's like, oh, so I've read these books by that guy that these guys based their whole shit off of, and now I understand them on a level that they may even resent me for a little bit, right? Because I mean, after all, fucking, I'm not one of them, right? I'm not their guy. And it's fun, you know. It's interesting to me. If you read Evola, he is an interesting author. He can be a little bit hard to understand at times. I don't understand every little thing that he says all the time. I would recommend him, but I will say that he was an occultist. You know, you have to understand that. Like, I don't take every little thing that I ever read of him and apply it, but there are things that he took from Christianity and applied to his occult beliefs, right? And there are things that are in his occult beliefs that if you look at Christianity and you compare the two, you're like, oh yeah, actually, you know, like for instance, I believe there is a spiritual caste system. It may not be exact. I'm going on a fucking rant and then some right now. Jeez. I do believe there's a spiritual caste system. I don't know if it's as robust or as concrete as Evola's spiritual caste system. But if you look at the Bible, you'll notice God picks people. And God loves everybody, but he picks some people to be special. He picks some people for divine purposes. He hands down his blessing to people. That's what happened with Joseph. He received the blessing of God. His sisters, his brothers got jealous, and they ended up kidnapping him and selling him into slavery in Egypt. And because he had the blessing of God, he basically worked his way up to not the ruler. He wasn't the pharaoh, but he was high up enough in their hierarchy, even as a slave, as to where he was kind of the fucking man. Again, like, that to me is indicative of there being a caste system that is handed down on high, right? God decides that, this person is going to be this type of guy. That person is going to be that type of guy. God decides these things. Nah, you just sound like Charles. Yeah, I've always felt like me and Charles were on the same wavelength, and because of that, it made it hard to talk to him because I wasn't sure how on the same wavelength we were. But even with the awkwardness between us when we'd see each other and we'd be like, hey, what's up? Nothing, right? There's definitely an amicability between us. Like, I feel like there's a silent understanding that almost makes it awkward, you know? Where it's like we don't need to say anything, but also we feel like we should say something. And because neither of us say anything too deep, we're like just looking at each other, waiting for the other guy to say it. You know, if that makes sense. That's how I feel when I'm around Charles. You know, I really like Charles. I'm a big fan of his on like an intellectual level, you know. The most infamous ONA founders dropped out. Allegedly, Richard Molt, Catholic, and David Myatt, Muslim. I'd suspect avoiding cannibalism and pedo charges. Yeah, that's the other side of ONA. That's like, geez, right? I said they're Evolian and shit like that, but I don't know if Evola. It bothers me that I still don't know how to pronounce his name. Actually, it's Evola. Evule. I don't think he was advocating for cannibalism.